people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that Canada's own Alalshikh Kubicki will be returning to action one more time before this year is out against Spain's own Bousari, December 21st in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
River Creek Casino and Resort.
In what is a flyweight contest scheduled for 10 rounds. Flyweight, that's where this past weekend's undisputed title fight took place between Gabby Fundora and Gabriela Alanis. That's where this fight is taking place, between Alalshikh Kubicki and Farah El-Bousari. Alalshikh Kubicki sports professional record of 11 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 2 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 12 professional bouts, to Farah El-Bousari, a bit more seasoned,
More weathered.
sporting a professional record of 9 wins with 4 losses, no draws, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 13 professional bouts, ahead of what is this learning fight, developmental fight for young Alalshikh Kubicki, who is only 21 years old.
To Farah, who's 30.
So Farah El-Bousari has been busy, has been active this year. She fought 2 times last year, and she already fought 2 times this one. This fight with Alalshikh will be her 3rd fight this year. She's coming off a points decision win over journeywoman Jasmina Nad in June.
No ring rust to shake off.
Though you will notice that she's dropped decisions to the likes of Kim Clavel, dropped a decision to the likes of Chloe Watson. Kim and Chloe are movers and tricksters.
These are tricky fighters, crafty fighters, mid-range, the inside fighters that are light on their feet, like to play at the angles and have fast hands.
You're talking about slipping punches, rolling punches, bending at the waist, bending at the knees, level changes, combinations, counters. That's the kind of fighters that have beaten Farah El-Bousari in the past. That's the kind of fighter that Alalshikh Kubicki is.
That's the kind of stuff she does. That's what she's good at. She's tricky.
Like Kim Clavel is tricky, Chloe Watson is tricky, Alalshikh Kubicki is tricky. Alalshikh, who's already fought 3 times this year, and this upcoming fight with Farah will be her 4th. She saw action in January, then again in May, then again in September, and she will see action one more time in December before this year is out. The ideal schedule for a young fighter.
It's what you want.
You want a fighter as young as Alalshikh to bank as many rounds as possible at this early stage, this young age.
Now, this past weekend, Gabby Fundora was crowned this division's undisputed champion. But I don't think we see a fight between Alalshikh and Gabby anytime in the near future, because by the time Alalshikh is ready to fight for a title, Gabby Fundora will likely have already moved up in weight, the titles will have gone vacant and been redistributed.
I figure that Alalshikh Kubicki, on the kind of trajectory that she's on and the schedule of activity that she keeps, she may yet be ready to fight for a title, I'd say, around the end of next year.
It's going to be a very different landscape at flyweight by that time.
New champions will be crowned, and it'll be a very different division that Alalshikh is part of, but she is one of the more talented and capable fighters at this weight. In spite of her very young age, she's got it. Athleticism, movement, speed, combinations.
She's not that big on power, but then again, neither is Kim Clavel or Chloe Watson, and they were able to beat Farah El-Bousari, so I think
Alalshikh will be able to beat Farah El-Bousari by out-hustling her the same way they did. I anticipate this fight goes to the cards. I anticipate that Alalshikh will win a points decision.
at first glance, that's the look of it.
Kubicki on points is the pick, and we'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches. In men's super bantamweight news, I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Naoya Inoue and Turkey Alalshikh have joined forces with a financial agreement. Turkey Alalshikh of Saudi Arabia's Riyadh season has announced the sponsorship union with Japan's undisputed super bantamweight champion Naoya Inoue that has an estimated value of $19 million. Details of whether it will take some of Inoue's fights to Saudi Arabia, the United States, or elsewhere is speculation for now, with some even close to Inoue unsure how the connection will shape Inoue's future fight schedule. Inoue will continue in the super bantamweight division for a Christmas Eve defense in Tokyo against Sam Goodman, and there's been talk of an April fight in Vegas against countryman and super bantamweight champion Junto Nakatani.
That's bullshit.
They're talking about what the people at Top Rank said, that they would like to bring Inoue and Junto to America in April, but it wasn't for a fight against each other. It's to have both fighters on the same show, fighting on the same card, but not against each other. The ideal site for an Inoue versus Nakatani fight is and always was Japan.
And we don't even know if they're going to do that, bring both boys over in April.
As Alalshikh has made undisputed title fights in the heavyweight and light heavyweight divisions, the potential for major fights in this arrangement is stark. Some candidates in that scenario could include junior bantamweight champion Jesse Bam Rodriguez, featherweight title fights, and perhaps mega bouts up at lightweight. Fights at 135 might be a bridge too far, but Alalshikh has sought before to create fantasy fights, including his push for a bout between 4-division champions Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford. The expectation may be that Inoue can take Riyadh's season ambassador sponsorship role and expand the reach by fighting in a market like, say, China, where Alalshikh has previously said he wants to go in the near future. So it's a little hard to know what this means moving forward. I feel like at minimum, this could bring Inoue to Saudi for, say, a fight with MJ Akhmadaliev, his other mandatory challenger via the WBA, who's going to be seeing action before this year is out in Monte Carlo. And if he holds his position and stays WBA champion, it's conceivable that Inoue might fight him outside of Japan in, say, Saudi as yet another defense of his undisputed super bantamweight crown. See, that I can see happening. But when you branch out, when you take a long gaze at what it might mean in the distant future, I'm not sure that the Saudis are going to take that Junto Nakatani fight away from the Japanese.
Not sure about that.
Inoue said, "I think it's all about timing. This year's fights have been decided. I don't know what will happen next year. If I can fight in Saudi, I'll just live up to those expectations. I think I'll just perform the way I do in Japan."
He already has.
He stayed in character 2 times in Las Vegas, once in Carson, California, and abroad in Scotland. That Inoue can stay who he is outside of Japan is already proven.
Got it?
But I just don't get the sense that a fight between Inoue and Junto would end up in Saudi or someplace else because, these fights that Turkey has made, excellent fights like Better Be versus Bivol,
Fury versus Usyk.
Turkey was the missing ingredient that made those fights possible because without him, they weren't. The money didn't exist in America or Canada or someplace else to get Artur and Dimitri in the ring. In some ways, that's true of Fury versus Usyk. Remember, they tried to do it on their own. They tried to do it themselves in the UK, and it all fell apart. It wasn't until Turkey put the money up that the fight became viable.
And that's where Inoue versus Nakatani is different. The money exists. The money is there. The market is there in Japan, all without Turkey's involvement to make that the biggest fight in the history of Japanese boxing.
That's a fight they don't need him to make. They don't require his involvement. They can do that one all on their own. So maybe Inoue fights MJ in Saudi on Turkey's dime, but beyond that, I just don't know. Now, I remember reading a few weeks ago that the official broadcast partner, the exclusive broadcast partner for Riyadh season shows moving forward, is going to be DAZN. And when I read that, I wondered, what impact could that have on participation?
As it pertains to all these different fighters that are with different promoters.
Inoue's promoter in America's Top Rank, and his fights are broadcasted on ESPN+, a deal that is set to expire next year.
The Inoue deal?
The ESPN+ deal. Top Rank's ESPN+ contract is set to expire in the coming year. So does that then mean that moving forward in America, if you want to see Inoue, it's going to be on DAZN? Because if Top Rank's not on ESPN Plus anymore, why would Inoue still be there?
We don't know that ESPN Plus won't renew.
We don't know that Top Rank won't get a new broadcast partner. These are questions that need answers. In men's middleweight news, Michael Benson was told by Frank Warren that Hamza Sheeraz's next fight will be for a world title on the same card as Daniel Dubois' return on February 22nd in Riyadh, though he did not confirm whether or not it will be versus Janibek Alimkhanulai or another champion.
Of which there are 3.
Janibek Alimkhanulai himself has been waiting all week for any new news about a Hamza Sheeraz fight after he was accused of avoiding Hamza Sheeraz, ducking Hamza Sheeraz by some boxing scribes who claimed that Janibek rejected an offer to fight Hamza just to end up fighting Andre Mikhailiovic instead.
For peanuts on $1.
The supposed offer for the Hamza Sheeraz fight was said to have been somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million or over $1 million. Janibek challenged that accusation.
Who made it?
Veteran boxing scribes Jake Donovan, Dan Raphael, and Yahoo's Kevin Iole.
Why would they lie?
And I can only tell you now what I told you before. If that offer, if it actually got made in between the time Janibek collapsed and the fight got postponed and the time it got rescheduled, he wouldn't have been at liberty to accept it anyway without forfeiting one of his alphabet titles because Andre was his mandatory challenger. So it is possible that somebody on his side rejected the offer, not because they're afraid of Hamza, but because they don't want to relinquish the title.
That's just me connecting the dots and bouncing ideas around. That's one way it could have broke down.
Ever since he stopped Andre Mikhailiovic and took care of his mandatory challenger, he's been on the lookout for that Hamza Sheeraz fight, waiting for some new news. Hamza might fight a champion in his next fight, but it may not be Janibek Alimkhanulai. That would be very bad optics for the boxing scribes who claimed that Janibek ducked him. WBC middleweight champion of the Dominican Republic, Carlos Adames, has been piping up as of late, saying Kazakh style, "Hey Nightmare, check your email box. The dreams come true."
What's he talking about?
Janibek Alimkhanulai responded by saying, "Don't joke. We all know you. Adames, send me the contract. There is no contract in my email. Why are you playing with the fans' feelings? We all know you. Everyone knows that if Adames sends me a contract, I will sign it today." And he is at liberty to do so. No other mandatory challengers to satisfy. He is not otherwise preoccupied that if Carlos wants to go, he can go.
Do it.
How do you reconcile all of this? Everything happening at middleweight? It's possible that Hamza Sheeraz fights a champion in his next fight, but it may not be Janibek and it may not be Carlos. Who it could be is Arislandi Lara! WBA champion. Don't forget about him. He's free. He's available. He ain't got no mandatory challenges to satisfy. It's the right time to fight him. Arislandi Lara has been around a very long time. Reigned as a junior middleweight champion for some years, and he's middleweight champion now, but he's in his 40s.
And he's still not worth any money.
Sporting a professional record of 31 wins with 3 losses, 3 draws, 19 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 37 professional bouts. Still one of the best fighters in the world, I'd say he is, that he's been able to hang around for this long and stay fighting and stay winning and stay a champion.
Still boring.
Still very good at what he does. Still effective. He actually fought 2 times this year. He's one of the few PBC fighters that saw action 2 times this calendar year. Once against Michael Zarafa, then again against Danny Garcia, both of which he stopped. Is Hamza ready for him?
Maybe. At least more ready than he's ready for Janibek Alimkhanulai.
Sporting a professional record, an unblemished record, of 21 wins with no losses, no draws, and 17 knockouts. Trained by Ricky Funes! Ricky! You got a potential star in Hamza Sheeraz, that's what you got. You got a guy who's fun to watch, good for a knockout, well-trained and well-schooled, but perhaps isn't ready for a Janibek Alimkhanulai. Maybe he's ready for a Lara.
He only fought once last year, just once, in August. But he made up for it this year, having fought 3 times, once in February, again in June, then again in September. High-quality wins over unbeaten Austin Williams.
And Tyler Denny, both of which he knocked out, both of which he stopped. His last 6 fights he stopped.
The last 6 guys. Can he stop Lara? Lara's never been stopped.
Lara's been active this year. He fought at least 2 times this year. Once in March, then again in September. So he's primed for a fight in February if one goes down. That if Janibek and Carlos Adames are on the eve of settling up with each other, and the news is that Hamza will fight for a title, the only other champion at the weight with a title is Erislandy Lara! There has been some noticeable angling to Erislandy Lara's success, that he only fought once in 2020, only once in 2021, only once in 2022, didn't fight at all last year, but he fought 2 times this one.
Angling.
Look at the opponents, look at the quality of his opponents, and then look at the schedule. Not only are these guys not that good, but he's been able to stay winning by not fighting that often.
The less times you're out there, the less probability you're gonna lose.
And when he is out there, look at who he's fighting. Cornflake Lamana, Greg Vendetti, Michael Zarafa, Danny Garcia. I still think Lara's crafty. I still think he's very good. At least good enough to give Hamza a stiff test, a good acid test, because he's vastly more experienced than Hamza Sheeraz and better than anyone he's fought so far. Still packs a punch. He can still punch.
You think Hamza's gonna fight him?
You saw what Frank said. Hamza's gonna fight for a title in his next fight, but it may not be against Janibek, and Janibek seems to be all tied up with Carlos Adames, who claims to have sent him correspondence that if those 2 champions are fighting each other, the only other guy at the weight with a belt is Lara.
Lara's a pure boxer and an outside fighter. For the most part, he still is those things. Careful, cautious, and defensively minded.
Economic, and he packs a punch. He's a quality over quantity kind of guy, the way pure boxers often are. Whereas Hamza Sheeraz, very statuesque for the weight. Lots of height, lots of length, lots of power, and a judicious jab. A piston jab.
Power.
He's younger, he's fresher than Lara, he's noticeably bigger than Lara, bigger than most other middleweights.
You think about the PBC schedule this calendar year, how they only really did 5 shows and 2 of them were Canelo fights, so those 2 don't count.
The Zoo versus Bakram Murtazaliev fight was actually financed by No Limit Promotions, not the PBC, so that one doesn't count either, that they just don't have the resources and the fight dates to keep their fighters active. You see that Carlos Adames is now piping up about a Janibek Alalshikh fight after rumors that he would be appearing on Gervonta Davis's undercard. Well, Gervonta's fight got moved.
It hasn't officially been rescheduled, and I don't think Carlos is piping up the Janibek about bringing him over to the PBC. No, I think he wants to fight on a Riyadh season show.
They don't have any money to bring Janibek over.
They're poor.
PBC ain't got no money to do that on their own. What Carlos is likely proposing is that he go over there. So between those 2 potentially fighting each other, that would leave Hamza to contend with Lara. And this would generate the most excitement the middleweight division has seen in a very long time, because this division's been dead as a doorknob for years now.
That would be great. That would be excellent. Sheeraz versus Lara and Janibek versus Adames. Sign me up.